We begin with the Vanguard newspapers this morning, but first let's let you know that Wale Fatade joins us this morning. He is editor of The Conversation Africa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning, Ayo.
Well,
good morning, viewers.
The
good
major.
To see you,
well, thank you. The major story still remains Omicron. It's on the front page. UK's ban unjust, punitive, discriminatory, FG declares, and quite a number of riders there insists vaccine inequality should be addressed, as Nigeria has enough vaccine to cover 70% of population by December 2020. Nigeria, South Africa should issue reciprocal travel restrictions on the UK. Others, as ascribed to Mogalu, ban on African countries unfair, discriminatory, says additional. US demands 24 hours negative COVID test from foreign travelers. Omicron not as deadly as previous variants, says Medical Guild. National Assembly will insist on prudent use of COVID-19 funds, says President of the Senate. Mr. Fatade.
Now, where do we start? it's obvious, and I feel so much for the colleagues at Vanguard having to merge or lump all of those things together. They are related, but then some salient stock will be lost in the midst of the chaos or the confusing stories. But I think it's obvious. The ban is not it's not based on science. Apparently, we have not had. And you know, until it came to light, it was a group of Dutch officials or envoys that were in South Africa that actually brought Omicron to Africa. That was how it happened. And South Africa just did what they should do by reporting it globally. The WHO has a system whereby you report the variant you might have discovered in your own country. That's one. Number two, as the Medical Guild said, science has shown again that this variant is not as deadly as Delta or the other variants. So you know there are many variants. So why then are you now saying people should not come? Now, lastly, for me, Europe is actually facing a severe wave of COVID infection now. We've seen it in Germany, we've seen it in Austria, we've seen it in Belgium, we've seen it in Netherlands. So, and those ones have not been banned. It's purely racism. And I don't think appealing. I was watching the Minister of Health. I think it was on your station on Sunday night, Dr. Yanire, talking that the federal government was not considering travel ban. And I said, it is not his call. Because apparently, the call Britain made was not based on science. And so that would be the remit of the Foreign Affairs Minister. And I think we need a kind of, what's that word now, retaliatory action. Because it's not based on science, sincerely. And we have now seen, it was very few people that were talking when South Africans were banned from coming to UK. Now it has come to us. So Africans need to have a concerted effort or a concerted action against Britain.
Well, the conversation is unending, it would seem.
Yeah.
But there's this one right above the nameplate, ultimatum. You'll hear from us in 24 hours. ASUU tells Nigerians.
I was listening to a radio station as I drove here, and I found that very painful. I got friends who are professors, I got family members who are teaching, my sister, my cousin, so I'm sure most likely they are watching this. They know where I stand on ASUU strike. And I mean, Kayode is laughing, I've expressed it there. It's one strike too many. I agreed, and I know that our federal government have been serious breaker of promises, of agreement. There's no doubt about that. Now the minister was saying, was it last year or early this year, that the government does not have money to pay. But have you called these guys back to renegotiate? So, and I think it is sad that we have had a lot of disruption. I was talking to a professor friend on Sunday night, and he told me the University of Ibadan was ending the 2020-21 session this December. They just started second semester exams. So, and I said, Prof, which one are you starting? He said it's 2021, 2022 in January. So how does that one end? Now when you have another strike, I think all things must be done. As bad as our National Assembly is, and they are really bad in some instances, I think they have stepped in. And I hope their efforts will yield success.
And I also hope your family and friends who are lecturers will allow you at the table this Christmas.
Oh no, they have no
voice
choice.
Your opinion.
And you know, some of those tables I'll be at the head, so they just have to join me.
Okay. Well, the Guardian newspaper is next, and as you'd expect, leads with this travel ban and the apartheid. FG Adesina Ishola, that's Nigeria's High Commissioner to UK, slam UK's travel ban. And a host of riders really just goes to paint that picture. And you've tried to touch on those issues. But take a look at this one right below the nameplate. It's in red, actually, as though it tries to give, some sort of prominence to the story. Nigeria's trade deficit rises to 3 trillion naira. So essentially that means that we're importing more than we're exporting.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've talked about diversification, right? I mean, we import a lot of PMS. Ideally, that's where a lot of our dollars.
That's a major importation.
Exactly, and we've talked about this diversification time and again. We need to not be import-driven as an economy. And I just wonder, is this the part where they say it gets worse before it gets good?
I really wish it's as optimistic as you have tried to put it. I was just scrolling through my archives, and I saw the spokesperson to the federal government, or to the president, our senior colleague, Mr. Adesina, who said in 2015 that we will stop importing in 2019. And this is December 2021. The question remains, what has happened that we can't get all our refineries working? We just have to answer that, because a large chunk of that importation is PMS, premium motor spirit, petrol, to the gentleman on the street. And then look at what has happened with cooking gas as well. And so we find out that the importation is majorly in the energy sector, and this could be breached. Now we are waiting for the Dangote refinery. So we can't do anything but that. And that's where you see basic economics, balance of trade, balance of payment, we are always in deficit. That's all.
Oh dear. A couple of other stories, really spoiled for choice. But let's take this to Abuja now and see what Markwe has for us. Markwe.
Well, let's take a look at leadership, and they have this one on the front page. Controversy trails 42 billion naira NASS complex renovation contract. Excuse me, that's their lead story. A little more detail. Contractor has no record of previous jobs. Official address untraceable. Original builders bid 27 billion naira but was overlooked. Reps deny underhand dealing in contract award. Award of contract followed due process, that's according to BPP. No contract has been awarded, says FCDA, and FEC to decide on project tomorrow. Remind you again of the headline. Controversy trails 42 billion naira NASS complex renovation contract. So that's the lead story on the front page of leadership. I don't know if you would like to comment on it, sir.
Honestly, I will feel like the Yoruba man who said that I don't know what to say. I'm serious. Because you see a beautiful story, even reading going by the headlines alone, or by the headline rather, and the writers, of the story the reporter have done, saying that it has been awarded. But why is it being denied that it's not been awarded? And for the Bureau of Public Procurement saying the contract followed due process, without inspecting the head office address, I think normal government contract in Nigeria, you have to show, is it 2 or 3 years tax payment? I mean, without having a physical address, and you want to renovate National Assembly? What shall we say to these things again? Nothing more.
Well, let's take a look at this one. Perhaps you'll have a clearer comment on this one. Prime Minister NERC intervene as AEDC workers shelve strike. Or yesterday there was a strike action which started, and parts of Abuja, if not the entire city, was thrown into darkness yesterday. But thankfully, by night time, the electricity was restored. But this is the story. Power Minister NERC intervened as AEDC workers shelve strike. Well, the question I wanted to ask is, do you think that it is right that when workers who work in very sensitive sector down tools, should they punish everybody else alongside their grievance? I don't know. Do you think it is fair?
Yeah, without having full detail of the strike or the proposed strike, I think we must remember that workers in every sector, they have families as well. And so if their working conditions have not been met based on their employment stuff, they have every right to go on strike. That's where I stand. The right to unionize, the right to go on strike by workers worldwide has been established by the ILO, of which we are signatory to. So you take care of them. We must emphasize that right. But I think for you guys in Abuja, good enough that you are able to have power supply back now, and thank God for that intervention. But we cannot abjugate the right of workers to go on strike. No.
So the question isn't about whether they have a right to go on strike. It's about whether they should shut down everything when they go on strike. That's the question.
Okay, let them go on strike and leave the supply lines open. But that could be dangerous because if there is no regulation. So the thing we must ask is, how come the communication has broken down that they are not going on strike? I believe they must have served notice, whether it's 3 weeks or 21 days or 1 month notice. The same thing we have had with ASUU. People that are supposed to monitor this thing or to take action don't take action. Why waiting until the last minute? Last minute preparation always gives room for issues like this. That's all. Again, I said I do not have the detail of what is going on there. Remember is it about 3 weeks or 4 weeks back, railway workers were on strike in Nigeria. The trains were not working. So what happened?
Let's leave it there for leadership newspaper.
Daily Independent has this one and is perhaps even talking a little more about investments. Insecurity won't stop investors coming to Nigeria. That's ascribed to who? Presidency. What's your take on that?
I don't know. It was a former secretary of the government who told us years back that who is the presidency. So we need to be sure which presidency said this. The president himself, any of the staff. Every time you drive on the streets of Lagos or Abuja, you see car number plates, the presidency, the presidency. So I don't know what the person has been reading because that's contrary to official statistics.
I recently saw, I think, an ID card of an INEC worker, and he had, I think, the presidency on it as well.
Yeah, because INEC is actually under presidency at certain
Well, this is actually from the spokesperson to the president, Mr. Femi Adesina.
So that's the presidency.
Yeah, that's the presidency now. So I don't know the statistics my elder brother has been reading, but that's not true. That's not correct. Things are not as glamorous as they will. We can't see what has happened. The South African companies have left in drones in the last 2 years. Sincerely, check that. So people are actually moving their funds. Remember,
can you tie that to insecurity? That's the question.
Well, because the economy is not moving. Now, there was a beautiful article I read by a Nigerian professor in US talking about how we are paying more for food. And now, sadly, it is not the farmers that are benefiting. That the chunk of higher prices for food, which all of us know, goes to transportation costs. Because the vehicles buy diesel and the farmers cannot farm because they are paying toll or they are paying taxes, whatever way you call it, to insurgents. And so we are paying the price.
Is it possible that the presidency has some information Nigerians don't?
Maybe. But then we don't deal with just stats alone or figures. We deal with actualities. I mean, we know how many of our people are roaming the streets for unemployment. And so if those investments are coming in, do they translate into higher employment figures?
It's interesting that Mr. Femi Adesina himself is a journalist such as yourself, so maybe...
Yeah, it's possible that there are facts he has that we don't have. I consider.
Well, right under the picture you see there, same COVID-19 Omicron story. FG kicks against restrictions imposed on Nigerian travelers, says vaccines to cover 70% of population available. That's the Daily Independent this morning.
Well, there's talk about investment as well on the front page of the New Telegraph, but from a different perspective, and this concerns the travel restriction, travel ban, whichever you want to call it. But New Telegraph calls it travel ban. OPS economists raise the alarm over investment disruptions, predicts recession in Q1 2022, foresee drop in FDIs, again, investment. Cost of production to rise, investors, Nigerian carriers brace up for massive flight cancellations, and it goes on and on. But this is not about insecurity. This is on the travel ban and the economy at large, pages 2, 3, and 8. And, well, this is something we began with, the Down College incident. You see, family demands coroner's inquest on Sylvester's death. And, I mean, I imagine that millions of Nigerians also are joining their voice. I imagine Mr. Fatade as well, also joining your voice to that.
Yeah, I'm a parent, and nothing is much more painful and sorrowful than losing one's child. Also losing a child in such terrible circumstances. So my condolences first to the the family who have lost their child. But I think basically what we have seen, and I think we need to be careful of this mob or hysteria action. Boarding houses are not evil. entirely, and I must put that there. I've had a son that went through boarding house and it didn't turn out worse. I've had siblings that were in boarding house, they didn't turn out worse. I've had incredible number of friends who are boarders. But I think what we are dealing with is the failure of regulation at all levels. The school, though, and college itself fail in its regulation. Then my own father is a retired teacher, there used to be the inspectorate division in schools. Are they still working? And I was checking some statistics yesterday. We have more private schools now in Lagos at all levels than public schools. So the quality assurance department in the Lagos State Ministry of Education, is it still functioning? And then, so who track all those things? In a normal society, the rating of schools will be displayed that Wale Secondary School has this rating, Kayode Secondary School has this rating. But do we have those things now? And then
still has them for public schools.
But what about the private schools? And so if I want to make a decision as a father whose child is about going to secondary school, and by the way, is the most critical level of school, I found it from experience. Primary school, you can get the one good close by in your house, but secondary school, most expensive in Lagos. And before you get the correct one, you have to search and search. What are the parameters with which a would-be parent or a parent will make or will use to decide those schools? And then until this family, until they approach Mr. Falade, who was investigating the issue? The Commissioner of Police told us nobody has made a formal report. And so, does it fall under the police? Does it fall under the Social Welfare Department? Does it fall under Ministry of Education? Not just sealing the school. So, regulation is a problem in this country. Who is regulating who in this matter? Now, who has been asked to come for questioning by any government institution? Who is looking to it? Where is the NUT? Are those teachers in those private schools, are they allowed to be members of NUT? Where are they allowed to be? There is what is called all Nigerian Conference of Principals of Secondary Schools. Is the principal of Dowen or all those elitist colleges, are they members of those things? And so there are several levels of regulation that have failed. What happened to the PTA? And I hope people know, some of these fanciful schools, the PTA is just to be an appendage. The school my own children attend or attended, nothing of that will ever happen. The PTA must be a kind of check and balance on the school authority, but we don't have that now. And then we have this level of parenting whereby you warehouse parenting. You are not really parents, you just outsource your parenting duties, and these are part of the failure. It's so bad and very sad because a life has been lost. And you remember the one you mentioned where parents have now been charged for culpable manslaughter. Who the parents of these children allegedly who are responsible for the death of this guy, what is happening to them? Has anybody been called for questioning? It's how many hours now?
There's so many angles.
So many angles to talk about.
So many angles to
which
this.
shows our failure of systemic failure at all levels.
About this whole thing, because at the end of the day, what matters here is, just as the father of the little boy has requested, justice.
But not justice in that sense, my brother. The question that we should be thinking about, or what should concern us, is how do we prevent future happening? We've seen it in Abuja. We've seen it in several schools in Lagos. We began this program by going into that and asking that all angles need to be covered of this issue, because if we just allow it to go without dealing with it, it's just a start. But for now, we have to thank you very much for being a part of our program this morning. Wale Fatade is former Assistant Managing Editor, Next Newspaper, as well as Commissioning Editor of the Conversation Africa. Thank you again for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Sunrise Daily continues right after now. Please stay with us.